The first workshop was very much grounded in the reality of what's happening, at least in our more collective shared storyline. And we did talk a lot about certain things like COVID and vaccines and agendas and controlling factions on the planet, and really just bringing this all back to how does this relate with our individual journey? How does this relate with where we're at and where we're headed? And one conversation that came up this past week with a friend of mine, was in regards to the one of the core topics we went into, which was the creation of our own individual reality. What does it mean to create your own reality? I like the term co-create reality because we are in a shared existence in this third dimensional sphere. So as much as creating our reality very much is the truth, the more accurate statement is we are co-creating, because we are co-creating on every dimension, with other beings. And at the source, we are co-creating with God source. The creation, the individual expression of our reality and our movements is co-created with God source. So in a dimension like this one, in physicality, on our planet Earth, naturally we are much more rooted in the co-creative aspect of creation, because we are among many other individualized expressions of God source. So in this regard, we have to take this into account with how we navigate our experience and not really get caught up in either side of the fence, where on one end, because of storylines that are passed around through social media and through mass media and what have you, we're naturally going to find ourselves in collective storylines or collective created timelines in which have varying levels of influence on our individual experience. And on the other side, us being an expression of God's source in individuated form, naturally we certainly do collapse and expand worlds simply with our consciousness. Like recently we did a workshop, we went out into nature, and of course we go into nature and very quickly almost all of the ideas of social media and quarantine and COVID and vaccines and all of that just goes right out the window, because we've just now stepped into an organic web where the elements are right there intimately with you, and it's very difficult to hold to synthetic or man created ideas that we're not no longer giving fuel to. So this is really where we rest in the middle, and we recognize that we certainly do give power to what we bring attention to. And when it comes to social media and the news feed and all of that, we do have a responsibility to clean up that news feed. I will say that, and really clean up our habits with how we interact with social media, because the majority of the speed of the sharing of thought forms is increasing due to the nature of how much we're spending time on social media, with more people needing to stay at home and like all that kind of stuff. So we can very quickly get ungrounded. And this was the premise behind, our nature retreats here in Ottawa. And it is very much the initial message here, to recognize that the greatest friend and ally we have is not necessarily out in the stars or coming from some ET race or even some, lofty teacher with all these absolute terms. The greatest friend that we do have at this time is the earth. And the earth is the safe haven, and we'll get into more of the reasons and the mechanics why that is, outside of just the practicalities that we recognize. Every time we go into nature, we feel more relaxed, we feel more at ease, we feel more connected and grounded with ourselves, because we are coming into contact with the closest relationship to ourselves, which is the elements, in a physical body, right? We're not leaving the body, at least not anytime soon. And so our ability to stay grounded within the elements of earth, fire, air, water, and the source of who we are, which is the ether, this is one of the most important practices that we can be involved in this time. And it's kind of like the 51-49 rule, in the sense of like, if we're just spending 51% at least of our time more connected in nature, outside, in the elements as much as possible, away from technology, away from social media, away from the synthetic aspects of our world, this is going to create a world of difference in how we're navigating the unfolding timeline. Because all of the ancient traditions and all the various paths of many different practices, meditation, breath work, fasting, connection to source, connection to nature, all of it, they all are representative of the simplicity of what it means to live as your natural self. And because we were out into this nature retreat this weekend, and at the end of the retreat, over that afternoon, the 6 hours, we basically figured out that all of the things that we would want to do, like in a self-care day within the city, are things that we naturally did within the 6 hours. Like, had a nice swim in the lake, sunbathed on the rocks, get a massage from the waterfall, put clay on our body, like exfoliating clay, like you would at a spa. Eat the berries if there's berries around, a nourishing like meal, like all the things that you would want to do in a self-love day within the middle of a city that you would either pay for or go somewhere for or do all that, are all done within an afternoon in nature. So it was really funny because it's all technically free, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty accessible, and it's all really there. And so when we're faced in a time, because a lot of the questions I've been getting, especially after the first workshop, are very relative. They're relative to what am I going to do if a vaccine mandate is there? What am I going to do if I can't leave my home? If, like in Australia, is happening right now. What am I going to do if I don't know, X, Y, and Z happens? And um, these are all valid fears and valid concerns that we may share. But one thing that's important to remind ourselves with is that the simpler we become, which basically means the more in tune and connection with nature we are, on all levels of being, the less that we are dependent on the man-made creations of this world. And so it doesn't mean that we're going back to live like a caveman or woman, or live just completely with no technology or anything. It simply means that the comforts that we've come to know as modern society and technology and all of these things are not dependent for us to feel and be in the fulfillment of our God source and our expression of divine love. This is all already available through earth and through nature already at the fundamental level. So this relationship that is fostered within ourselves, which is very much the practices of fasting or renunciation or minimalism or celibacy or these types of things, which I don't recommend doing 100% of the time, but they are practices that have always been in spiritual traditions, because they are practices to get us in comfort with pain and in recognition that as we pass through the doorways of releasing from our comforts, we're given the true pleasure, which is the pleasure of ourselves and the orgasmic nature that we can have within our own being, not necessarily sex with another or with food or with all of the other pleasures that we've gotten to know through the privileged, modern world. So once again, it's not running to the other side and saying we just need to live, in the forest and create a teepee and all of this. What it's saying is that if we fundamentally have come to this connection and realize this on a direct knowing level, we're going to be less and less confined by any fears in regards to how and what the timeline is going to be within the navigation of these coming years. And the other element that's important with this is staying grounded not only within our natural world, like in the forests and in the natural existence that we all have access to some level, is very much right outside of that is what's going on within our immediate environment, meaning our home, our family unit, our street, our community, our city, our province, our country, because there's a lot of generalized ideas going around, like this is being mandated and this is happening and this is occurring and this is happening there. But when you actually really dive in to the details within where certain things are happening, it's actually infinitely different, like province to province, city by city, place to place. We're all infinitely different in what reality we are subjectively perceiving, and this is reflected within laws and bylaws and mandates and all those things that are arising within our world at this time. So while we can say that, yes, there are specific agendas coming from a top-down hierarchy that have infiltrated and have been infiltrated on this planet for a very long time, it does not mean it's going to be the same everywhere. So we can't just generalize and wrap everything up in the same thing, because this creates so much excess amounts of fear and worry that may not necessarily even be applicable to you in the present moment or present time. And so this is a really important point, because it's very quick that we see an article or see a title of an article and then we think, okay, well, that's everywhere. You know what I mean? Or this is happening everywhere. And this, and but this continues to be very head centric, and it continues to pull us away from, again, we can be all in this fear up in the box of our social media computer, and then we get up and go into the forest and we're like, oh, wait a minute. Earth is still here. Things are still okay. I am still existing, and just like we did at the beginning, we connect with this source. And even if we're not feeling okay, even if there's emotions, even if there's things arising, we're still here.